Welcome to Hail Varsity Radio, the voice of Husker Nation. Insight, opinion, expertise, with the biggest and best names talking Nebraska across the state. Join the show on Twitter at Hail Varsity and at Schmidt_radio. Call in at 402-466-ESPN or 1-800-825-5865. Here's Chris Schmidt.
Welcome to it. Great to be with you on a Thursday. It's Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbal. Very special guest. We are streaming live on ESPN Lincoln Facebook and waving at you right now. A proud Lincolnite, a man down in Bama, a New York Times bestselling author, a friend, dear friend of one Bruce Arians. We say hi to Lars Anderson. Elijah Herbal back in studio as well. We are streaming and Elijah's waving. He loves lawyers today. We'll just leave it at that. And I'm doing all right. I had a taco salad, man, so everyone's in for it.
You make it sound like I'm in legal trouble or something.
No, you're doing well.
Yeah, I was just going to say, my dad was a lawyer. But I've been sued by many lawyers, so I have mixed feelings about lawyers.
Just depends on what side of the fence you're on, Lars.
Exactly.
Right? Hey, it's good to see you. Thanks for coming to town, man.
Yeah, here seeing old friend Sarah Campbell.
All right.
And we've been having some fun together, and just great to be back in Nebraska. And it's been interesting talking to fans and media members. And I was just DMing with Tom Chattel.
Tom's good stuff,
the other day. Just about everything that's happening with the Nebraska program.
Yeah, it's been a week, Lars, with Monday's announcement that Coach Frost is back. Trev Albert's giving Nebraska's favorite son another year with a pay cut, and then of course Scott Frost letting four of dear close buddies go on the offensive side. So it's a bye week. You recalibrate. Staff is on the road recruiting. Tough news today we'll get into in a moment with JoJo Doman done for the year. Bless his soul. The kid played with a torn tendon in his middle finger on his right hand against Purdue and then suited up to go against the Buckeyes. So JoJo shutting it down, the heart and soul of that black shirt defense. So no JoJo going into Wisconsin. Nebraska will try and figure that out. But the big picture is, gear up and win some ball games in 2022. I saw your tweet Sunday night at Lars Anderson 71. Is where you follow Lars on Twitter. But do yourself another favor, get his book, A Season in the Sun, with Lars Anderson and Bruce Arians. But I thought, man, Nebraska decided to keep Scott. I think a lot of Nebraska fans are okay with that, some are not. But you listen to some of the national talking heads, your friend Colin Cowherd coming out a couple of days ago as well with Joel Klatt saying, hey, Nebraska's close enough to warrant a fifth year because Nebraska's a 6-year rebuild. I've been through this a lot the last 2 decades trying to cover this program, and it's always been, were you a Nintendo 64 and an original Nintendo guy? You just hit reset when the game isn't going well, and it's okay. Well, Nebraska's been hitting reset for a while, and they're going to stick with Scott for another season. And maybe it was a bit too presumptuous to think by year 3 or even year 4 they could be playing in Indy with what the rebuild was. Let's talk a minute here about kind of your reaction, your read on what Trev's done, and also, how hard a sell it's going to be to get some quality assistance in here for Nebraska here for 2022.
You and I were together at Big Ten Media Days when Scott Frost had just been hired. Mm-hmm. And I remember I was on your show, and then Scott comes out. Remember what he told the assembled media there?
Adjustments.
He said, you better get us now.
Yes, get us now.
You better get us now. And what did he say when Joe Burrow wanted to come to Nebraska? What was the direct quote?
Do you think that the paraphrasing of it is, do you think we don't have somebody better, or you think he's better than what we got, I think is the actual?
Okay. And so Joe Burrow was dying to go to Nebraska. and the head coach basically stuck his middle finger to him. And he goes on to win the national championship and number 1 overall pick in the draft.
And playing well for your Cincinnati Bengals.
Yeah, I'm playing very well for my Cincinnati Bengals. I mentioned just both of those things because, to me, they sort of underscore the two fundamental issues with Scott. And that is, one, his attitude. His attitude toward fans, media, I think has been borderline arrogant for the last few years. And who knows how that is playing with recruits. And two, for whatever reason, he has tied his wagon to Adrian Martinez. And so he basically, when he was asked about Joe Burrow, he's saying Adrian Martinez is better than Joe Burrow. So if your head coach, who is a former quarterback, your offensive coordinator, face of your program, if he has that much trouble identifying talent, then what does it, at the quarterback position, what does that say about the other positions? And then a third issue with Nebraska has been lack of development of talent. Because let's face it, it's not Tom Osborne era anymore. Nebraska is not going into Florida and getting 4 or 5 star players. They're not going into Texas. They're not going to New Jersey. They're not going to California pulling out these 4 and 5 stars. It's going to Colorado and getting a 3-star, turning them into a 4-star. Mm-hmm. Wyoming. I mean, there have even been kids who've gotten out of state that are playing really well at Iowa and Iowa State. So it's been a lack of identification of talent. And then, who are you as a offense? What is your identity? And I think he learned the hard way that the Central Florida offense, the Oregon offense, not going to work in the Big Ten if you don't have superior offensive linemen. And that's been the issue. I mean, I could go on and on, Chris.
No, I get it. And listen, I think you look at Scott, and yeah, there was some misses. There's some missteps, and now it's a chance to fix. And it's fix or else right now, right? And
well, so he's been completely emasculated.
Sure. And he'll respond to that or he won't. It's one or the other.
I'm frankly, I'm surprised that they stayed with him. I'm glad they did. Mm-hmm. I'm glad Trev did. I think it was the right move. But they're staying with him basically at gunpoint, saying you got to do this, and this, or you're gone.
I don't think Trev. I'll say this. I don't think Trev's. I think it's more of a suggestion than an edict. Okay, Trev wants to see him be more CEO-ish, right? Delegate. Hire the right people. Delegate. Find somebody. And Scott talked yesterday about finding somebody he really trusts. Because if you're going to fight for your job beyond 2022, you want to have hands-on control of that, right? Well, it's easier said than done to delegate an offense, but you need to go a different offensive direction or at least be able to find some help on the offensive line in the portal. Okay, find some help when it comes to the offensive brain trust of what we need to be and how we want to live in the Big Ten. You can still run some of your passing schemes. You can still run some of your misdirection. You can still have an athletic quarterback. You can do all of those things, but just know how difficult it is in the Big Ten to live with a mobile quarterback. And in today's day and age, you really just have one, because if you have two, one's going to transfer with the portal. So, I mean, there's a lot that's going to go into this next hire from a trust standpoint. The Burrow thing, at the time I understood it. Okay, and hear me out. When it comes to, I said this kid, I flew across country, I recruited Adrian, I told him he'd have a chance to win the job, and I said, you're the only guy I'm going to go after. So he kept his word to him. And I know Joe Burrow's Joe Burrow, and God loved Joe Burrow, and I know his dad, and we love him. I mean, we're so happy with the Nebraska connection and that Joe's done well. And what's Joe do here in year one? Is it 9 or 10 wins? Maybe. Is it 7 or 8? Maybe. What about year 2, where he goes unbeaten and has the most prolific offense in college football in the last 5 to 10 years? Well, you don't have that in 2019 in Lincoln. You probably go bowling. You probably go get 7 or 8 wins. Maybe you don't. It was perfect for Joe to go where he went and go number 1 overall. He would have been drafted. He'd still be a stud, but it wouldn't have looked as prolific or epic had he not gone to LSU, had he ended up in Lincoln. That's just my take. He would have elevated the program and done a good job. We just don't know. That first year, Adrian, you and I were both like, man, there's a lot of good things to come.
Yeah. I thought he was going to be a Heisman contender his sophomore year, but there has been really nothing but regression since his freshman year.
Yeah, and injury.
And injury.
And there's no help behind him.
Doesn't it stand to reason that Scott would play backup quarterback for these last 2 games and see what he's got in the Smothers kid?
If it depends what you think, and that is, do you want to continue to go with Adrian because you believe he gives you the best chance to win, or are you punting on 2020 and seeing what you got for 2021 to see what you got for 2022?
You're absolutely punting on. You've already punted on 2021.
I know you have.
You just fired your entire offensive staff.
I know you have, but he still will not punt on Adrian. I don't think. I think he's going to.
So Adrian Martinez is going to be the quarterback next year?
I think he's going to be the quarterback the next 2 games. I don't know about next year.
What do you think?
I think
the decision's already been made.
I think with Verduzco leaving, I think Adrian's probably not going to stick around. I think he'll be given the opportunity to stick around, okay? And if he does, that means you still go get a quarterback in the portal, or 2 quarterbacks in the portal, or 3 quarterbacks. I mean, go quarterback shopping.
Spencer Rattler.
Nah.
Would he come to Nebraska?
I'm not a Spencer Rattler fan. Elijah can jump in on this as well.
Who else wants Spencer Rattler?
Spencer Rattler wants Spencer Rattler, and that's it. That's the hardest day of his life.
If you believe in Mel Kiper, he was going to be a top 5 pick at the start of this season.
And his own teammates have probably given him 17 code reds.
He probably does.
Guys don't want to play for him. He got his butt kicked and knocked down. No one's there helping him up.
But he does have NFL arm talent.
Sure.
Whenever you look at it, and what can you sell as Nebraska? Hey, we're going to be playing Oklahoma next year. You want to go stick it to him? You can sell it to him. The question is
you wouldn't say
do
no
you
to
want
him.
that drama?
You know what Nebraska
is he
can
grow
sell?
Up?
Yeah, that's a good question. But I live in Birmingham, Alabama.
Mm-hmm.
And,
tell us about tell me about some of the Bama throwaways.
Yeah.
Lars, help out your home state school.
Yeah, maybe the 4-string quarterback will transfer here and start. But at Alabama, Bryce Young is making more than $1 million this year off of NIL. And
Nebraska can pull that together too.
That's the thing. That's what is going to make Nebraska an attractive landing spot to high-level players from other programs, especially at the quarterback position, at the marquee position. So perhaps Nebraska can go out and get somebody good. I just don't understand why the Smothers, Logan Smothers.
You've seen him.
Yeah. I mean, I do a radio show in Birmingham with Antonio Langham.
Jay Barker.
And Jay Barker.
You know what Smothers has done in Alabama. He's a hell of a good ball player.
Yeah. And he was a 4-star. Antonio coached up in that area, Muscle Shoals area, and he was really shocked that Nick Saban didn't recruit him. So he's got a bunch of talent. At least there was potential there. And
he's kind of your dual threat.
Yeah, and Scott basically said, "This is my guy for the future."
Mm-hmm.
So what is the problem?
Why? I think the issue is, and again, none of us can see practice, Lars. I think the issue is being able to make the throws in the offense. And Scott, that's part of this change we're talking about for 2022. To get down and win in the Big Ten, you've got to run. Scott's run a higher percentage of the time. He's been a run-first offense, but when push comes to shove, they want to gash you with the big pass play. They want to gash you with the big play.
Well, you're saying
through the air.
What you're telling me is Scott is missed on Logan Smothers.
I don't know that. I don't know that he feels ready based on.
Has he hit on a single quarterback?
Freshman year, it looked like he did with Adrian pre-injuries.
Was Scott the first Nebraska coach to recruit Adrian?
No, Adrian was committed to Cal, and then he was committed to Tennessee, and they all had coaching.
Scott flipped him.
Well, they had coaching changes as well. He was going to be a quarterback for Butch, and I think it might have been post-Tedford, whoever was there.
Yeah.
It might have been Wilcox. I don't know, at Cal.
Yeah.
Okay. So,
How do Nebraska fans feel about Adrian?
man.
I hate being critical of college kids.
You're asking questions. I think they love his heart. I mean, the kid has played with a broken jaw. They just want the decision-making to go with the toughness, right? And not forcing it. Now, I'll say this, and we've been pretty vocal about it in defense of Adrian, that and Elijah's an old all-city lineman for Southeast. We had a little night power here today.
Go Knights. Sarah went to Southeast as well.
Okay, so it's a four-person party today. Thing about this is Adrian's been running for his freaking life all the time. That's fair, and part of that is playing guys that are freshmen, redshirt freshmen, or that don't have a season under their belt as starters. Some have, right, but some don't, and the only guy you got there is Juergens. So it's a cause and effect thing. It's a cause and effect thing with offensive line play and Adrian, and oh no, am I going to get murdered? Or man, we're down here. Let's go make a play. Or I just threw an interception, or I just fumbled. So man, I'm afraid to let it rip here because I don't want to turn it over again. It's a myriad of things. Well, here's some thoughts from Brandon Vogel, managing editor of Hail Varsity. He's coming up. Lars Anderson, best-selling author, radio host, and Lincolnite from back in the day with us here on a Thursday.
And we're back
Fellas, think we could listen to the radio lesson?
on Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery.
Yes! That's awesome!
Thanks for hanging out on a Thursday. Gary Barnett coming up here in 35 minutes. Our favorite sideline man and NFLer Jeremiah Sirles. Next hour, Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbal, and Lars Anderson, New York Times bestselling author, in studio today. And Sarah Campbell also making sure we don't set fire to anything. This is good. We welcome in managing editor with HailVarsity.com and magazine. He, too, an author, Dream Like a Champion with John Cook, at Brandon L. Vogel on Twitter. Vogues, how has your week been?
An unexpected one, I guess, for the most part. It's, been an interesting one. I think we came in knowing that Nebraska could go this way, at least with a decision to retain. I think if that was the way they were going to go, this was the time to do that. I did not think we would find out about an offensive staff restructuring with 2 games to go, but here we are, and it's been, once you get past this is unfortunate, people lose jobs, that's how it is in the coaching industry, it adds some intrigue to Nebraska's future.
It does, and interested to kind of sift through some of your reaction to Frost's first comments yesterday publicly. And trust is huge, obviously, with whoever the new OC is. And you've got positions to fill. You've got some good folks that are going to do that in the meantime. Ron Brown, one of our favorites from his history at Nebraska. I mean, he'll handle the running back room and do a great job. Sean Beckton has been retained, and he'll handle the wideouts, the tight ends for sure, which is big. But moving forward here, is there a name or a philosophy or a style you think can be shifted to that isn't going to upset the apple cart too bad, where you've got 2022 to win? You can kind of hit the ground running after this season expires.
Yeah, I think the key area Nebraska needs help in right now is the running game. And I think it's pretty clear from how they've played that run rate, has been climbing since 2018. But 2018 was really the last year where Nebraska's run game was one of the best in the top 20 or 30 in the country. And I think that's where they want to be. They want to be known as a team that can run the football, and it just hasn't been consistent enough there, whether that was mostly due to the backfield, mostly due to the offensive line. It's always a combination. So as I've thought about this and kind of listening to Coach Frost talk yesterday, I think that's probably where you start, is you look at coordinator. You're probably looking at an air raid coordinator, which I don't think we were looking at that anyway, but that's kind of took that and made it much more unlikely in my mind. So look at those offenses out there that run the ball really well and do it in sort of a creative way.
Brandon, this is Lars Anderson here. Big fan of your work. Pleasure to talk to you. You know, I do my own radio show with Jay Barker out of Birmingham, Alabama, and we're on throughout the Southeast. But a question that I get from Alabama fans, Auburn, they ask, how did Nebraska get here? What happened? Why is Nebraska not even competing for, much less divisional championships? Why are they in last place in the Big Ten? And I find it very hard to come up with a very quick answer to that. I don't know if you have a paragraph, abridged version that you could provide that I could take back with me to Alabama. But what, seriously, what happened?
This story, Vogues, is going to be as long as Godfather Part 1, right?
I was going to say, well, yeah, this is a book in itself, probably. And I'm not saying I know how to write it or even put together a proposal that I have this locked down. But when I look at it, so you could start with just the turnover in coaching, but that's kind of college football now, right? You know, I mean, the surprising thing on Monday was, and I'd say mildly surprising, was that Scott Frost is going to get a fifth year. Most coaches don't with the record that he has. And you get into that cycle, and it's tough to break. But I think, and this kind of started to crystallize for me when Trev Alberts came aboard in July and, you know, getting the chance to hear him speak at various points. Like, I don't know that there's been a strong top-down vision in the Nebraska athletic department for quite a while. And some of that circumstance, some of that I think is getting that hire wrong. I mean, you can look at Alabama as kind of a shining example. You know, the AD there is one of the best in the country, and it looks that way. And it looks that way in more than football, but at a school like Alabama or Nebraska, football's what everybody sees first. So I think there's some of that, and I think hiring Trev Alberts was maybe step one in addressing that. The degree to which Trev and Scott have been involved together to try and get this football thing right, even though it hasn't showed up this season, is probably step number two. So I'm encouraged on that front. But as far as an explanation goes, that's the closest I've been able to come.
Brandon Vogel with us here on Hail Varsity Radio, giving us a synopsis of Lars Anderson's new book, or 2 decades out of the sun, a Nebraska football story.
Just two? I love it.
But Brandon, I want to get your take on today's news, and that's that JoJo Domann is not going to be returning for the final 2 games of the season as he's undergoing surgery. I'm not sure you can call that opting out, more getting a head start on his recovery, but do you think we'll have any other players opting out ahead of the final 2 weeks of the season with the news that 4 offensive assistants will be on the way out?
Yeah, I would be a little bit surprised. This was certainly a unique circumstance for JoJo, and I personally makes total sense that he is a guy where there's no question that he's put everything he's had into this the entire time he's been here, and he's been here quite a long time. So I think if we were to see some of those, and you know, the week's not out yet, but I feel like if you get into next week, it's game week, and then you go straight into a short week against Iowa, you'll probably make it through without any others. So I'd be a little bit surprised, but you can't totally rule it out.
Vogues, Cam Jurgens, is he a guy that you need to worry about moving on after this season?
I mean, he's certainly got the talent level. I haven't looked recently at any of the latest draft stuff to see where he's currently sitting, but I think he's a guy who might have some of those exploratory conversations and take a look. Anytime you lose a position coach, I think it ups the odds of that, certainly for guys that are that close to being NFL ready. But you know, I've always sensed a pretty strong bond between Frost and Jurgens as well, so that might play into it too. But he's one where right now I wouldn't have him on the list of guys that I could expect or would reasonably think could leave, but he's right there.
Brandon Vogel's with us here on Hail Varsity Radio. Vogues can be found on hailvarsity.com and magazine.
If Scott Frost had been let go, let's play the what-if game for a second. Where does Nebraska look for their next head coach? And it's a question that could very well linger into next year. I don't personally think 6-6 is going to get it done for him. If it does, then I turn in my fan card. I'm done. If 6-6 warrants a second contract, but
be an existing contract.
Yeah,
he's through 2026.
Okay,
but,
so yeah,
but I get what you're saying.
Yeah, it would be
the fan card's still goodbye.
So anyway, and that was one reason why I've been an advocate to actually bring Scott back, because if you're going to get rid of the guy, you better know what the plan B is, and I don't think there is a clear plan B. Could it be somebody like Craig Bowles? Do you want somebody with a Nebraska connection, or would you bring somebody kind of like what Auburn did in my part of the country with Brian Harsin? Brought him in from Boise State, completely fresh ideas, completely new philosophy of doing things. I mean, is that what Nebraska needs? And just going back to the hiring of Trev Albers, I was a little, as a Nebraska fan living in Alabama, a little disappointed by that. It seemed too incestuous. Seemed too much of advocating of groupthink. Hey, let's just keep doing things the way we've been doing them. I mean, it's not working. It's not working.
Trev's hire so far has been nails. Absolutely.
I'm sure it has, but I'm just saying philosophically, looking at it from afar, I just absolutely didn't agree with it. But again, I'm not the president of the school and making the chancellor and making all that money. So anyway, but the question is, Brandon, where would Nebraska, if they decided to part ways with Scott, where do you think they would have looked or could look in the future?
Yeah, I think so. I've never been, when it comes to football coaching searches, I've never been a strong proponent of you've got to get somebody in who understands the culture, which usually means somebody who's been here in some various capacity. I think that's a bonus if you can get it, but coaching searches are such a crapshoot. I mean, all the evidence says that they are. For me, when I look at Nebraska, particularly over the past decade, it would be hard if Nebraska was making a change this year, or if it has to happen next year. It would be hard for me to not put a real premium on some sort of Big Ten experience. And I sort of agree with you. Like, I don't know that there's a kind of great pool of guys you can immediately think of this year. Matt Campbell's one that, Ames isn't far away. People get to watch his success there and the way that they play football. And I think that's the type of coach, pie in the sky stuff. Like, I watched Utah play and with Kyle Whittingham, and I'm like, that is like tailor-made for what I think Nebraska needs and what I think most Big Ten teams would need. Problem is, I think this is his last job, and he's nearing probably that end here in the next 4 or 5 years. So then you're kind of back into the next up-and-comer, and if you put a premium on Big Ten experience like I do, I've been kind of impressed by Jeff Hafley at Boston College. He was only at Ohio State for a year. It's tough, but I would put a real premium on somebody who, just seeing the kind of how much was lost in translation for this staff to come to the Big Ten. I think having somebody who understands the uniqueness of this conference is probably the best thing.
Brandon Vogel's with us. Vogue's about 20 seconds. What's coming up with HailVarsity.com and magazine?
Yeah, so we'll have women's basketball and men's basketball and volleyball throughout the weekend. No football this weekend, of course, but also, bigger deal, coming up on next week, our basketball issue goes to print, and that'll be in mailboxes and on newsstands here pretty soon. So make sure you subscribe to get that. For sure.
HailVarsity.com/subscribe, digital and print. Vogues, we'll talk Saturday. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thanks a lot, guys.
All right, Brandon Vogel with us. Lars Anderson in studio. Winding down hour one with Hail Varsity.
Chime in 402-466-ESPN or email the show, Chris@HailVarsity.com.
Just try me.
Back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Winding through hour one, Lars Anderson in studio, New York Times bestselling author, and of course, native Nebraskan down in Alabama with the University of Alabama. And Lars does an awesome job with his radio show with Jay Barker at Lars Anderson 71. All right, we have Nebraska win total for 2022 to get into. We have Bruce Arians stories to talk about. 8.5 minutes to do it. So I want to hear about this treehouse, man.
Yeah.
Did you build a treehouse as a kid and go visit it, or what?
You know, I did have a treehouse as a kid growing up on Calvert Street by Maud Rousseau. But
so you were just kind of back that stretch behind just north of Rousseau, on Calvert.
Yeah, absolutely, right there.
And if you're listening to us in central or northeast Nebraska,
you have no idea.
You got to check Calvert Street out, baby.
No, so this was a big surprise for me. My girlfriend, Sarah, she took me to a place in Sioux City, Nebraska, not Iowa. So it was on the good side, at least.
I'm going to just keep
South Sioux City.
I'm going to just leave
South
the Sioux City debate alone.
Okay, yeah, South Sioux City, and you can stay in a treehouse. And so we stayed in a house, in a room that was about a quarter of the size of your studio.
Okay, and
I'm sure Sarah paid an extraordinary amount of money for it, but it was good. It was I don't know. It was an adventure. It was an adventure, and had a horrible steak in Sioux City, and really, Sarah and I have no
desire to travel back.
Not only that, like I don't even want to go around it. and my radio partner's wife, Sarah Evans. Oh my gosh, really brain cramp. Sarah Evans she's playing in Sioux City on December 19th, and my Sarah and I were going to go, but after the experience of last night, I don't know if we're going to be returning. Yeah.
So Bruce,
even backstage passes, all that, not worth it.
You and I are in agreement. 6 wins won't cut it. Trev won't put a number on a win total, but it's postseason. It's got to be. It's what does it look like, right? And listen, it looked okay at times this year without the result. But Lars, a take or a thought on your win total? I'm and Elijah, you jump in too. I'm at 7 or 8. It's a lighter schedule, which doesn't mean much. This year is supposed to be tough, and it got even tougher because Purdue's good. Minnesota's been ranked. Michigan State's 8-1 and in the playoff hunt.
All right, well, let's look at it real quick. North Dakota, win. That's 1.
We can't do that anymore. It's pencil, not pen.
Georgia Southern is tough. They could come into Lincoln.
They just got USC's coach.
Georgia. But let's count that as a win. 2 wins. Oklahoma.
So we got to go to Ireland. We're going to the Guinness factory before we go to the game. So Ireland is Northwestern to start out.
Oh, that's right, because that got moved. That should be a win.
But Scott Frost is yet to win an opening game at Nebraska, a season opener.
Maybe out of the country will be a difference.
Will it be in Dublin?
Yeah.
Okay.
We're rolling over.
Let's just give Scott the benefit of the doubt, and they win their first 3. Oklahoma loss, 3-1. Rutgers
win. Where is it? Here or there?
It's in Piscataway. Have you ever been to Piscataway?
Never been east, man. I mean, I've been to Williamsburg, Virginia. That's it.
That's where my parents live.
And North Carolina. That's about it.
Okay, so let's just say Rutgers is a win. So that'd be 4-1. Indiana in Lincoln.
Got to be a W.
5-1.
And then you get into the heart of the schedule.
Michigan, loss, 5-2. Minnesota.
Here.
I'd say loss, 5-3. Wisconsin, loss, 5-4. Purdue.
There.
Says it's in Lincoln.
It's home.
Okay.
Because that was the word. We had to play 2 straight there.
You traded Wisconsin and Purdue. Yeah.
So let's say Purdue should be a win.
He's got to be 7-5, doesn't he?
Purdue's got to be a win. Illinois has got to be a win. Iowa will be a loss. So that would be 7.
Okay.
Bowl game could give him 8.
You got to beat Iowa. You got to beat Iowa this year. You got to beat Iowa next year. Eventually, you got to take down Wisconsin. You got to beat Minnesota at home. I mean, these aren't major asks like taking down Alabama or LSU or Oklahoma, right? Now, we don't know what the quarterback's going to look like. Don't know the O-line. But
do you think Alabama's second string could beat Nebraska?
I don't know, man. I don't know much about your second string, other than they're good and
There's more 5-stars on their second string than probably in the entire Big Ten.
All right, let's go to the phones real quick. Let's bring Roseanne on. Big fan of Lars. Do you know Roseanne? Roseanne, welcome in. You're on Hail Varsity.
Hi.
Go ahead.
Hi, Chris. Well, first of all, I'm a woman, and I'm a mother, and I'm a grandmother, and I'm a great-grandmother.
All right.
I'm 78 years old, and I've been watching and following Big Red football since Devaney in the late 60s. Went to all the Big 8 games and away games, even went to Hawaii with when they played the Rainbows.
I hear that was a party.
Oh, yeah, it was great at Aloha Stadium. Anyhow, Lars Anderson, he has put into words what I have not been able to. I agree with him with everything he said, especially the 2 points with giving the finger to, Joe Burrow. And I think he's arrogant. Frost is very arrogant and conceited, and I think he needs to come down a notch or two. And I can't even stand to listen to him anymore on the coaches' shows or anything like that. And the reason why is just like Lars said, he's very arrogant.
Roseanne.
And I've been watching football for a long, long time. Went to all the breakfasts on Thursday. They used to have breakfasts on Thursday at the Kellogg Center on East Campus. Had all the old coaches, Milton and Tennifer, and, of course, Osborne, and Monty Kiffin and Darlington. I've seen them all. I think Frost he's very arrogant, and I think he needs to humble himself a little bit and stick to what he's getting paid for.
Roseanne, hey, appreciate you listening so much. Thanks for the phone call. I'll say this. One thing that will keep you from being arrogant is if your boss comes in and says, you know that $20 million, it's now down to 7.5, right? And by the way, and then you got to go in and look guys in the eye and say, you're not part of this with me anymore. I'm sorry. That will humble you. And Scott's a guy that's been great at a lot of spots, but Scott's had to be humbled. And I go back to the Arizona State game. That experience humbled him. Frankie London humbled him, and it's made him respond the right way.
I would say also the Showtime documentary that I co-wrote with Armin Katayan humbled Scott a little bit. My not-so-favorite Scott Frost story.
Hang on to that. We're up against
let's do it.
We're up against
when we come back, I'll give you my not-so-favorite Scott Frost story and why Scott will never talk to me again.
Lars Anderson is in studio.
What a
Chris
hook
Schmidt,
that is.
A little bit. We'll wind down.
I know this business, man.
Hail Varsity, presented by the Nebraska Lottery.
And now,
back to Hail Varsity Radio.
One final segment here with Lars Anderson, New York Bestselling author, New York Times Bestselling author. His book, Season in the Sun, with Bruce Arians on the title run by Tampa, full of Huskers there. Lars, good to be with you. Thanks for coming in. Glad you're in town. Glad you popped by. And
I love spending time in Nebraska.
Well, it's good to see you, and a lot of Nebraska influence on that Tampa squad.
Yeah, absolutely.
How was that experience? You wrote Bruce's first book.
Yeah, Bruce and I collaborated on The Quarterback Whisperer, which came out when Bruce Arians was the head coach of the Arizona Cardinals, and he wanted to use that as a sort of a mechanism to propel him to getting a job being a TV analyst, a color analyst.
He did Fox for a year, didn't he?
A year.
Preseason
or
something? Yeah, okay.
And then it was Jason Light, who ended up
Pride of Fremont.
calling BA, and it was because of Jason that Bruce really got the interview and got the job. And I tell you, it's when I went down to Tampa after I got the book deal with HarperCollins. First thing I did was meet with Bruce and Jason, and I'd never met Jason before, and we hit it off so well. Just as like two Lincoln guys, and turns out we had a bunch of mutual friends from his days of working at the Brass Rail.
See, the Brass Rail stories are legendary.
Yeah,
from him,
and I include one in the book there where Jason, and he was a big dude back then. He's still a big dude, but he denied entry to a customer who had already been overserved, and this guy ended up sort of waiting until the bar shuts down and follows Jason, stalks him basically to his car, his Jeep, and Jason drove a Jeep in the middle of winter without any top on it. And he's now the general manager of the Bucs.
Little A-team love there.
Yeah, exactly. No, the guy ended up lunging at Jason, and Jason just rearranged his face, and the virgin white snow was soon just soaked with blood, and it wasn't Jason's. But after that incident, Jason basically said, "Hey, you know what? Maybe this bartending / standing in front of a bar thing is not going to work for me." And it was not that long after that he got his first job with the Miami Dolphins.
So you sat down, you got a title book with Bruce, and what was your takeaway with this championship run by Tampa? A lot of Husker love on there with one of the Davis twins. You had Levante, who we're big fans of Levante, and Sue, of course. But I've
got some good Sue stories, but a lot of it examines the relationship between Tom Brady and Bruce.
Because of the quarterback,
and
right?
And why Tom ultimately ended up leaving New England. Sort of that's a complicated story in and of itself. And then the struggles they had last year. Tampa, it wasn't easy for Brady. He missed out on over 1,500 reps because of COVID, learning a whole new playbook. And the bye, they were 7-5, lost 2 in a row. And at that point, BA was like, he was not thinking Super Bowl. He was thinking of, hey, let's use these last few games and get ready for next year. But they ended up sort of melding the Tom Brady offense, death by 1,000 cuts, with the Bruce Arians offense, where they throw the ball deep more than anyone else in the league. Get those two together, and they ended up going on a 8-0 run and winning the Super Bowl.
Lars, can't wait to spend more time with you. Thanks so much for your time here in studio, and we'll do this again, man.
Awesome.
Hour 2's on the way. Gary Barnett coming up.
Welcome to Hail Varsity Radio, the voice of Husker Nation. Insight, opinion, expertise, with the biggest and best names talking Nebraska across the state. Join the show on Twitter at Hail Varsity and at Schmidt_radio. Call in at 402-466-ESPN or 1-800-825-5865. Here's Chris Schmidt.
Back at it, Hour 2. It's Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbal. Big thanks to Lars Anderson, of course, national media man and radio host from Alabama, New York Times bestselling author, for being in studio with us last hour. We welcome in a Hall of Fame coach with Colorado and Northwestern, Gary Barnett, with us to kick off Hour 2. Coach, are you in warmer weather, or are you braving some white stuff in Boulder?
82 degrees here in Scottsdale, Chris. It was a tough go, but I got through it. 18 holes, a little practice afterwards, a little putting practice. Demo day was a big day today. I mean, what gets better than that? We've actually talked from demo day in the past, so it's one of the biggest demo days in the country. So, it's a great day for me. I get to talk Nebraska football with you. Shoot, man.
Listen, let me ask you this. Were you more patient with your quarterbacks or your putters?
My quarterbacks. quarterbacks.
Okay.
I can buy another putter. I can't buy another quarterback. So you got to be patient with your quarterback.
Hey, that might be changing in the name, image, and likeness time, though. You might be able to buy a quarterback.
That's true.
Man, well, hey, good answer there with the quarterback patience. I got to get your take on all of this, Coach. You've been in the profession a long, long time, and you've seen a lot, and you know how assistants are so important to the head man. And let's just kind of go back to Monday for a minute with Trev Alberts announcing that Scott's back, the kind of the Harbaugh treatment with the deal being restructured, and then later on Monday, 4 assistants on the offensive side were let go. What's your reaction from Scottsdale to Nebraska's situation right now? Are you surprised Scott got brought back?
I'm not surprised that Scott got brought back. And I'm not surprised that he had to restructure his contract or that he volunteered to do that, from what I read anyway. I am surprised that they're firing 4 offensive coaches. And, I don't know where in the world you decide that that's the thing that has to happen. I really don't. I mean, I struggle with that. But that's the decision that was made, and everybody's going to have to live with it. And, I understand that sometimes somebody has to be demoted and somebody has to take the fall in some regards. Colorado's a perfect example. They fired their offensive line coach. They played better the last 2 weeks. I get it. Mm-hmm. And maybe that needed to happen. But 4 guys, families, all that sort of stuff, when you're in it, you know how much the families are involved and they're dependent upon this lifestyle and this living and this job, and somebody decides they don't need it, they don't have it anymore. So I struggle with that a little bit personally.
Gary Barnett's with us. Coach, when we talk about the Nebraska football team to end 2021 and the new Nebraska team that's going to be fighting for a job in 2022, the talk from Alberts and the transformation that's necessary is more of a CEO type. Attention to detail, knowing what's going on with all facets of the team and coaching all those areas, and accountability is big. Trev's making Scott accountable. Scott's got to make players, coaches, himself accountable, so it's not another one-score loss because of a bad punt or go down the list of screw-ups. How difficult is it to step away from calling the plays like you did to just being the head guy and delegating? Was that a struggle for you? And how does Scott get to being a competent CEO?
Well, it wasn't so difficult for me to step away because going into Northwestern I knew that was a job that was going to demand all my time. And for me to think that I needed to call plays or I needed to run the offense, I just didn't see that. For me, we had so many places that we had to improve and create a better image and reach out to people that was a full-time job. So that wasn't hard for me to do. And since I wasn't calling them when I left Northwestern and went to Colorado, that wasn't a hard transition either. I think the transition to being a CEO, that's a little harder, I think, because you've got to see yourself in that light. You've got to take yourself out of the realm of calling plays, and you got to look at your whole program, and then you've got to start making sure that the people you have involved with every aspect of it. I'm talking about admissions. I'm talking about all sorts of university committees and things like that, you are in charge. That is your responsibility. So that's probably a harder step than anything else, than stepping away, is that all of a sudden, you're going to be responsible for all that stuff. So, I mean, that's the way I saw it, Chris.
Coach Gary Barnett's with us here on Hail Varsity Radio. And Coach, when you're talking about the people around that CEO, we now have 4 years of hindsight to look back at Scott's decision to bring his entire staff from UCF, a lot of those guys with little to no Power 5 experience. How does that decision look now 4 years on, especially whenever you combine it with the fact that it took 4 years for Scott to make any substantial changes to that staff?
Yeah, well, I think that's a good question. I think that's a good point too, Elijah, because making a move from the lower level division to the Power 5 division, especially in the Big Ten, it's not just one level; it's 2 or 3 levels. And he's changed some offensive coaches. Matt Lubick didn't come with him, I don't think. I think he added Matt, but. It's what's in reality. It's what somebody else thinks needed to be done. It's not what Scott thought needed to be done, and that's what's going to be. That's the tough pill to swallow. I think is that somebody else has told him, his boss, Trev Alberts, has said, this is the decision that I think, or we think, whoever that is, has to be made, and you're going to have to make it, or you're not going to be the coach here. So he makes it. And if I don't know, it's so involved, and we're never going to know what those conversations went like. But you have to wonder when he sits down with those 4 guys and said, "Okay, it's either I'm gone or you 4 guys are gone, and I get to stay." How's that work out? So, I mean, that's. There's just more to it that, the public looks at it and goes, yeah, they need to get rid of those coaches. Those are like I said, they're families. They're people who have jobs, and all of a sudden their jobs are taken away because, somebody thinks the head guy needs to make changes, and boom. But on the other side of it, when you're in that position, when you're in college football and Division I, it can happen like that. But you generally hitch your wagon to somebody who isn't going to let that happen. So it's complicated. And I really feel for those 4 guys that are being let go. Now, I'm sure they're getting some compensation for it, and everybody will look at it and say, well, they get this or that. It's not the same. It's still, you're getting let go. You don't have a job. Your life gets turned upside down. Your family gets turned upside down. All of a sudden, you're the reason that Nebraska isn't winning. That's the way you look at yourself, and that's the way you think people look at you when you go to the store. So it's complicated, guys.
Coach, a thought on the sell job that has to take place in the portal, on the trail, and by the way, to find that next offensive coordinator that Scott kind of reiterated, somebody I got to trust. How tough a sell is it to fill those spots for maybe a year?
Yeah, well, it is, but college football coaches have become hired guns, and they know it, they get it, and no matter whether you're hiring a head coach or whether you're hiring coordinators, you're trying to catch lightning in a bottle, and it's a crapshoot. It really is. So it'll continue to be that way, and you just hope you throw the dice the right way, because there's just no way of guaranteeing it, and. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens, and 1 year is what it's going to be, and who's going to be the quarterback.
I don't know if it's Adrian or the portal, but if Adrian's back, you got to go portal, I think. So there's competition.
Yeah, who knows? Well, I mean, everybody's got an opinion on that. I mean, he's a guy it's hard not to have a guy with all that experience and ability be your guy, but I think that the fan base, I'm guessing here, is going, we got to have a different guy doing this.
You're not wrong. I mean, that's kind of the take. Gary Barnett's with us. Coach, so a couple of names for offensive coordinator I want to get your take on. if you're familiar with, and maybe you are. Jake Peets, he's down at LSU. That LSU staff's going to get shaken up. And then Kirk Ciarrocca, he was at Minnesota and then was hired by Penn State and then punted by Penn State. He's an analyst at West Virginia now. He was the OC for that really talented 2019 Gopher team, right? The RPO squad that was physical and could still spread it around. Are those two guys, two of those names that could fit in the Big Ten?
Probably. Like I said, Chris, it's a crapshoot.
Sure.
I mean, you don't know. You're just hoping. You really are. I mean, there is no guarantee. And, I mean, why wouldn't Matt Lubick fit? I mean,
right.
But he didn't. So you don't know. It's being lucky is what it is.
Well, let's hit some rapid fire, Coach. Let's do some games this weekend. You ready? You got the sleeves rolled up?
I'm ready, buddy.
All right, Michigan at Penn State, and Michigan -1.5.
Well, that's changed, and it was 0 when it came out.
It was Penn State -1. That's what I saw.
Yeah.
I mean,
I'll tell you, I haven't seen that. This is a tough one, I think. Penn State, I like Penn State, but I think Michigan's playing really good football, and I think Michigan wins this game, not Michigan State.
All right, you've got Oklahoma at Baylor.
Baylor, yeah.
-5.5. Sooners, you going with Aranda?
I think the Sooners are hot. They've had a week off. I think they're ready to go play this thing. I like the Sooners.
Pirate is going to Auburn. Pirate doesn't like kickers, and you have Auburn favored -5.5.
That's a lot, I think. But I still don't trust that Auburn quarterback. But their defense is pretty good. Leach. That's a tough one for me. I think Auburn wins the game, but I think probably Leach covers.
Okay. Back to the Big Ten. Purdue. I mean, they have been either hot or cold, and they're back and they're ranked. Purdue is Ohio State's favored by 21. Is it closer than that?
I think it's closer than that. I really do, but I think Ohio State probably wins. But I think it's closer than that, but for sure.
Is Braum a name to think about at Florida, or do you think Florida is not going to move on from Mullen despite his struggles?
I think they're going to move on.
Really?
Yeah, I think they're going to move on. I mean, you can't have that kind of roster and that kind of recruiting ability. I mean, recruiting center, and do like they've done this year. They may only win 2 games. So no, I think they move on.
But their combined 7-point losses to Bama the last 2 years. It's crazy. I mean, think about it. Think about
they lost.
No, I know. Gary Barnett.
Right?
No, they lost.
You got to be the fan base here. They lost.
No, I know. Minnesota's at Iowa, and the Hawkeyes -5.
I don't see that. I think Minnesota's a better team, and I just don't see, even though it's at Iowa, I don't see Iowa beating them by 6. No way. I just don't think they have enough offense. Minnesota, if they get their act together, they can hurt you. They can pound you. So I'm thinking Minnesota.
Tight ball game here. Ole Miss hosting A&M -2.5. A&M.
College game day from the Grove.
Well, I'm surprised you're not there,
the
Elijah.
Boys, have you ever been to the Grove?
Elijah's been a couple of times, and he hasn't invited me.
I was there when game day, and Katy Perry was there. I mean, it was absolutely on steroids that day. But this one, A&M's defense is really good. Ole Miss can do just about anything. Who knows which way they're going to go? I'm a little surprised A&M's favored, to tell you the truth. Okay. So I'm going to go with Ole Miss there. Did you
have a Coors Light with Katie?
No, I didn't have a Coors Light with Katie, but it was crazy down there, unbelievable. I got pictures from that day in my phone somewhere, so it was nuts.
There we go.
That sounds about right.
That's awesome. Gary Barnett with us. Coach, we'll get caught up next week. Appreciate you taking some time today.
All right, guys. Good to be with you.
Take care. There he is. Gary Barnett joins us Hall of Fame coach, his take on Nebraska. We'll get the O-line perspective here from Jeremiah Sirles. He's next, a Thursday with Hail Varsity, presented by the Nebraska Lottery.
He's in his 30s, but sounds like he was born with a stogie in one hand and a brew in the other.
Now, say my name.
It's Schmidt on Hail Varsity Radio.
I got the body of a taut, preteen Swedish boy.
Good stuff from Gary Barnett, Lars Anderson in hour one in studio. And Sirles says, give me a call. Where you at? You're calling our favorite sideline man now. Very shortly, get Sirles' perspective on the week, get his take on the O-line. Thoughts on JoJo Doman's career as JoJo done for the season. Numbers to get in, 466-3776, 800-825-5865. The phone line can email chris@hailvarsity.com. Follow us on Twitter at Schmidt_radio, at Herbal Essence for Elijah Herbal. And follow Jeremiah Sirles on Twitter at Sirles71_HSKR. Your all standout Husker offensive lineman, longtime NFLer, and noted hunter. Sirles, we need an update. How's the hunting going?
You guys are lucky I got on my tree stand early for you.
So you're just up there kicking it.
Oh, I've been in a tree more than I've been awake the last few days. So there's a big deer out here that I'm chasing, and my wife has been so gracious enough to allow me to keep chasing it on the bye week here. So as you guys were talking, there's a big deer right there as I'm driving back. Holy cow. As you guys are, as we've been talking, I've been hanging out in trees. So, but busy week with football. Yeah,
reaction to the week with the news. Trev, of course, announcing that Scott's back, and 4 good guys no longer part of the offense. Want to get your take and specifically your expertise with the offensive line. How are guys on that O-line going to react to no more Greg Austin?
You know, it's going to be really hard. The O-line is such a brotherhood. The O-line is something that, I mean, you kind of have to band together a lot of times because it's, as always, it's like it's kind of never your fault when things are going well, but it's always your fault when things are going bad. And there's been a lot of bad this year, and the O-line's taking a lot of blame. And so you kind of band together in your room, and when your leader gets let go, that's really tough. And so it's going to be really important that guys like Cam Jurgens step up. Guys like Matt Schichterman, who's a senior, step up and really lead that room and rally the guys together. But that's going to be a big loss for them because I know Greg Austin did so much for them.
Cyril, speak a little bit to what this offensive line is and what they, as you project, can be just because of their youth. And it's not an excuse, and I know you're late in the season, so you're not a freshman or a redshirt freshman anymore. But just give me a take or so, again, leaning on experience, what it's like to actually start versus sub that first year. My point being is I think this O-line can be good.
Yeah, I think this O-line can be good, and I think a lot of got blamed on Greg Austin with the tackle play this year. But when you look at our tackles, you have Bryce Benhart, who's a redshirt sophomore, who really only experienced playing was in empty stadiums last year, which is basically all glorified practices. And then you got a redshirt freshman, first-time starter in left tackle in Turner Corcoran. Meanwhile, you also rotated another freshman in there, that Teddy Prohaska, before he got hurt. And so everyone was yelling at Greg, development, man. He's not good at developing guys. You can't look at first and second year players as, oh, he can't develop guys. You have to look backwards on how you develop guys. He put 2 dudes in the NFL. Brendan Hymus and Matt Farniak are on 53-man rosters right now in the NFL. That's development. And there just wasn't a lot of depth behind those guys by transfer portal, by guys just not panning out. So he was forced to play those young guys. You take your lumps when you play young guys, but it really pays big benefits and dividends as you get older. And as this group grows older together, they will become a much better offensive line.
Jeremiah Sirles with us, Hail Varsity Radio. Sirles, let's speak about Scott and these next 2 games, and we'll talk Wisconsin next week. But you know, how does Scott move forward here with that delegation role, the CEO role, the organizational role, and how does Trev help with that?
I think that's going to be really hard for Coach Frost to do. I mean, as it is for any coach that's called plays for a long time, right? It's in their blood. It's in their DNA to want to run everything. But I think Scott looked at the last 4 years and really did some self-scouting of himself and saw that maybe what he was doing, trying to run the offense and be the head coach and do all these things, it's a lot different than UCF, and especially here. And for him to have the fortitude to look ahead and be like, maybe I do need to step back from head in the playbook, head in the film, head in the tape, and study so much in the offense and really look at this as a broader manager-type perspective. And I think that's really good because I've been around really good coaches that have been able to do that. And I think that could really help this team, especially if he brings in someone that he trusts and he believes in and they believe in each other. I mean, obviously he's always going to have the stamp of approval because he's got HC on his hat. But I do think that that's going to be a really good role for him to continue to grow and develop as a head coach as well.
Jeremiah Sirles is with us here on Hail Varsity Radio. And Jeremiah, we've been talking today. We don't think Trev Alberts is going to put a minimum win total that's going to be necessary for next season. But what kind of improvement do you think you can expect from a D1 program bringing in 4 completely new offensive assistants? Is there going to be a learning curve for this offense during the offseason? Or is it something where you think that some of these guys coming back can pretty quickly pick up a new offense or an amended look to the offense and get some dramatically improved results next year?
The hardest thing of when a new offensive coordinator comes in is the language changes. Like, right, inside zone is inside zone. Power, but what people call them is different. So that'll be the biggest thing. When the OC comes in, he's going to call what we called something. He's going to call something completely. This team's going to have to learn a little bit of a new language when it comes to that. But as far as like learning in big jumps, I don't think you're going to see a drastic change in like scheme or a drastic change in philosophies out of the gate because we are built with our team and our personnel-wise to run a certain kind of offense. And you don't just want to come in and square peg, ground hole it, a la Mike Riley, and have Tommy Armstrong back. No, we have certain places, keep people in certain places that we're going to play to our strengths. And great offensive coordinators aren't so stubborn that they just roll in and say, we're running my plays. They look at what they have and they say, I'm going to call the plays that are best suited for the players that I have. And I'd like to see a lot of that from this new offensive staff when they come in.
Does the line makeup have the ability to be downhill? I mean, can they, if they're asked to run block and do more power? And I know they've done power, but it's been a zone blocking scheme, Sirles. If it's more of a power component, do you like the bodies on the line that are potentially coming back?
Yeah, I do. And honestly, a lot of that can be fixed and molded in the offseason. When you have a new offensive coordinator come in, the number one thing he has to do, and him and the strength and conditioning coach have to get on page with the philosophy. I mean, right now we have an offensive line that's a little bit lighter because we're built to run tempo and we're built to go fast at times. And the offensive linemen specifically have to be able to reflect that. They can't be the Wisconsins where everyone's 330 across the board because they're only running 60 plays a game when you have an offense that wants to run 80 plus. So I think that's kind of the key component. To answer long answer to your short question, yes, they can. Because they're still young, and you can still mold them into what you want them to be.
Jeremiah Sirles with us here on Hail Varsity Radio. And Jeremiah, before we let you go, we got about 4 minutes left here. I want to get your take on some of today's news. That's JoJo Domann deciding that he is not going to be playing the last 2 games of the season, instead opting to get a surgery done before the season ends. And I want to get your take on if you put yourself in the shoes of any of these guys currently on the team, where 4 guys of the staff are now out of a job, and it kind of feels like these last 2 games that the coaching staff has almost waved the white flag. Would you be in a boat where you'd be thinking, if you have an NFL future in front of you, would you be thinking about opting out of these last 2 games?
You know, I think JoJo's dealing with an injury, and I think that's a little different. I think that if you just opt out because you're a senior and you want to go to the NFL, there's no one on this roster that has the ability to do that right now, in my opinion. There's no one on this roster that I look at and go, yep, that guy's a bona fide NFL 100% getting drafted player in the top 3 rounds. He should sit out and not risk injury. I think that JoJo's case is a little different with the injury, But I do think that a lot of these players will be back next year, and a lot of these players want to build momentum, and they want to play for pride, and that's the kind of players that I want to see go out there and play. But me personally, if I was dealing with an injury and we had 2 games left and nothing to go and I wanted to get a shot to go to the NFL, I think my teammates would understand. I think the coaches understand. And to talk about a guy that's poured his heart and soul into Nebraska, JoJo Domann is embodied what it means to be a Husker.
All right, you're a former Carolina Panther. Cam back in Carolina. Thumbs up, thumbs sideways, thumbs down.
Well, it's got to be better than Sam Darnold. So I think thumbs up in that respect, because Sam Darnold has looked like what we thought he was for the Jets.
Well, it's not even Sam Darnold anymore. Now it's P.J. Walker, the pride of the AAF.
Sam jacked his shoulder. Fighting Dwight Schrute is no
Sam
longer.
Darnold, P.J. Walker, Sam Darnold, the captain, Mr. Potato Head, it doesn't matter. The quarterback situation's been a mess in Carolina. I think Cam Newton brings some stability back to that. And Matt Rule being a college coach, I'm sure he'll have 1 or 2 tricks up the sleeve there for the old running quarterback in Cam.
The key is to throw it to my fantasy star, DJ Moore. If you can do that, I'm a happy camper, and the whole Carolina fan base got to be happy.
Okay, OBJ.
Fantasy football is not a real thing.
Sirles is like, you fantasy losers.
Sounds like you're bad at fantasy football.
I'm terrible at it.
Sounds like he's going to use his bow and arrow on you next time he sees you. So let's talk OBJ to the Rams. Is that worth bringing in? They're already high level, probably 2 seed. Is more better with him catching passes?
The Rams are all in, man. Making the trade for Von Miller, bringing Odell Beckham in. I think that they feel like they have lightning in a bottle right now with Stafford and the pieces that they have, and I think they understand that lightning is only going to last 1 or 2 years, and I think it's a good move, bringing as much firepower as you can to really make a run at this thing, because, man, the NFC is really good this year, and they're going to have to go through some tough teams to get to the Super Bowl. But I think they understand that. I think they understand what lies ahead of them, and they're building themselves to beat Tom Brady. That's what I truly believe. They're building themselves to beat the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to get to the Super Bowl, and with more firepower, you can do it.
Jeremiah Sirles with him. Follow him on Twitter at Sirles71_HSKR. Sirles, what's your Instagram, dude?
It's at jsearle71.
Okay, so do that. Find him on the socials. You hear him on the sidelines with Nebraska football. Does an awesome job. And you catch him on, of course, the network as well. Sirles, be good. Good luck in your search for Bambi's dad, and I want some jerky when you do get a deer, okay? Did he just hang up on me? Wow. That's an answer to the jerky request. That hurts. We'll head to the casino next. Danny Burke on the way.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Back into it at Hail Varsity Radio. Time for Burke's Best Bets. Danny Burke from the VSiN Sports Network at his show Rush Hour, and Danny's daily podcast as well at Danny Burke 5 on Twitter. Pride of Chicago, how are you?
Schmidt, not too bad. I mean, the weather's taking a turn here, so it's getting to be about that time, but that just means we're getting into the nitty-gritty of football weather, so can't complain too much. Yeah,
we'll crank up the NFL Films voice and scream about the winter wind, no longer autumn wind. Over-under on Junior, Carson Schmidt passing his second learner's permit written test. He failed the first one. Oh, he failed the first. So this is his second attempt, huh? So said it about when So the money line. What's the money line? Yeah. We'll put second time around. We'll put the yes probably as a slight favorite, maybe about minus 115, and we'll give the no about plus 105. So you know better than I do, but look, second time around, you got to think he's a little bit better prepared. Let's hope, right? Exactly. Well, not any Nebraska action this weekend other than the search for an OC, an O-line, and a wide receivers coach and a running backs coach, with the news out of Lincoln and Coach Frost getting a 5th year. Want to get your take on Michigan-Penn State. Tough ball game for the Wolverines. They're in Unhappy Valley, minus 1.5 Penn State. Penn State's a pretty good 6-3 team. A win against Auburn earlier, but really we kind of have seen what Iowa's become, and that really derailed Penn State despite a good effort against Ohio State. does Michigan have it in them to go get another tough road game?
I think that's the bigger question more so than what can we expect out of Penn State is, does Michigan have this game in them? Can Harbaugh win a significant game as of this point? And I'm tending to lean toward the no, Schmitty, just because of what history has told us. Now, you mentioned that Penn State game against Iowa. That, in my opinion, was a little bit fluky just because Clifford, not being in the game and their backup was one of the worst backups I've seen in quite some time, at least in that game. But then you lose against Illinois at home in 9 overtimes, and there's literally no excuse for that game except that they were looking ahead to Ohio State, but I still just can't fathom how that game even went down. Look, they did have a decent performance against Ohio State. Penn State is still playing for at least somewhat of a significant bowl game. We know Michigan still has a lot on the line. I just think it's going to be a tougher environment. And Schmitty, real quick, this is at 11 a.m., right?
That's my thought.
Yeah, which seems kind of odd that it is. So it's a little bit different in the sense it's not going to be as rowdy, so that's beneficial to Michigan. And look, again, at the end of the day, I just need to be convinced by Harbaugh that he can get this job done, and I'm not really thinking it's there right now. So I'm going to lean a little bit toward Penn State on the money line, just betting them outright. Quarterback-wise, virtually even, right? I mean, McNamara and Clifford, you could give me one or the other, and I think you virtually get the same results, maybe a little bit better with Clifford. Yes, the running game is more solid with a team like Michigan, but defensively you're fairly even. So I think the home field advantage, while nowadays doesn't play as big of a factor as it has in the past, there are some certain spots where it does, and I still think, despite it being an 11 a.m. kickoff, that Penn State is one of them. So I'm gravitating toward Penn State, Schmitty. I don't know if I'm going to play it, but for the Big Ten slate, this would probably be one of the better plays I would like, and I would go with the Nittany Lions.
How about Oklahoma? Do they stay unscathed? They are at Dave Aranda's Baylor, 5.5, road favorite for Boomer Sooner.
Yeah, so I actually laid 5 in the hook in this spot here. Look, Oklahoma's coming off a bye, and I think not that we're forgetting about Oklahoma, but we have this notion now of what we saw in the beginning parts of the season that Oklahoma's just nothing, and they don't deserve to be in consideration for the college football playoff. And I get it. It's a legitimate reason to be thinking that, but these last 4 games, they've got an average winning margin, I believe, of about 13, 14 points, if I'm not mistaken. Regardless of what it is, they've been actually playing like the team we imagined they would be. And they know how important this game is. Every game's incredibly important for a team like Oklahoma, now even more so than ever, and especially them once again coming off the bye. Look, I just think they have what it takes to at least win this game by a touchdown. And I think the good thing about Oklahoma in some of these spots is you're still going to get them in a buy low opportunity because people just don't completely respect them yet. But I think this is a good spot where they can wake people up a little bit and be like, oh, yeah, that's right. This Oklahoma team was supposed to be arguably the top team in the country. They're still undefeated. Hopefully they get an impressive win because I laid 5 in the hook with the Sooners.
NFL we go. Kansas City in Vegas, your second home. Chiefs, the narrowest of favorites on the road at -2.5. You taking the points, you giving the points.
Yeah, if anything, I'm taking the points here, Schmitty, and even more so, I think you tease up the Raiders. You get a home underdog, tease them up by 6 through the key numbers of 3 and 7. Then you get the Raiders catching 8 in the hook. Look, they always play Kansas City close. I mean, it's a division rivalry. Kansas City is nothing impressive, Schmidt. I mean, at all. You're barely beating Jordan Love at home, and aside from that, there's just so many other instances where Kansas City has let people down and has proved that you cannot trust them. So why trust them here? You can make the case, well, the Raiders are, dealing with all these distractions, and look what happened last week against the Giants. I get it, but if the Raiders can finally just have one normal week going back at home at a game where they could kind of rally around each other in their community and now have a little bit more time and not craziness to deal with heading into this division game with a team they're familiar with, I think the Raiders put up a good fight. But again, it's still Patrick Mahomes, and we're all waiting for him to get back to normal. Maybe it's against the Raiders, so if it is, why not just tease up the Raiders instead so you give yourself a little bit more security and have the Raiders catch an 8.5 instead? But if you don't like teasers, then yes, I would still go with the Raiders.
A game that's uncertain right now. Danny Burke, Pride of Chicago, VSiN Sports Network, Burke's Best Bets with us. Seattle, Green Bay, and it's -3.5 pack. Russell Wilson, I think, is going to be back. And do you have any definitive answer from your friends in the desert on Rodgers?
Yeah, I'm going into this game, Schmitty, assuming that both of those guys are going to be playing, because you have seen the line movement go towards Seattle from about 5 to 3.5, as you alluded to. I think the only way that moves is because that Russell Wilson's going to be playing, or, of course, if Rodgers isn't. But my thought as of now is that Rodgers is going to be playing. Ultimately, I'm going to stick away from it regardless. We'll see how Rodgers responds, because this is a guy who loves to have a chip on his shoulder, Schmidt, even if he doesn't need one. Well, now he's certainly going to implement one onto himself after the whole debacle this past week. So, if it gets to 3 and Rodgers is your quarterback against a Seattle defense that is not impressive at all, then yes, I would look toward Green Bay. But if it's over the 3, I could understand why you would take the points with the Seahawks. But again, Schmidt, like I said, I'm probably going to stay away, or let's wait to see what happens on the field. Bet this one in game, my friend.
Last thought here, about 30 seconds. Do you like OBJ going to the Rams, and do you think Cam can have a rebirth back in Carolina?
I think both of those are completely comical. One, I'm kind of pissed about OBJ because Cooper Kupp's on my fantasy team, so I don't want him taking points away from the leader, Cooper Kupp. You already got Jefferson, who's an emerging star there, who can be your OBJ, and you already have Robert Woods, who's a stud. I don't know why you need an OBJ on your team who might end up being a distraction. Even if he isn't, what's the point? With Cam Newton, that is so funny. You get rid of Cam Newton. You're still paying off the guy that replaced him in Teddy Bridgewater. Then you're paying Darnold, who replaced him. And now you're paying Cam Newton to replace all those guys who replaced him. It makes no sense. Why are you signing Cam Newton once again? It's just comical. We'll see what happens with the guy. I mean, I'm not rooting against him, but I just think it's so laughable that they're doing that.
Danny Burke, Burke's Best Bets, VSiN Sports Network, and tune into his show Rush Hour all over the country and, of course, on iHeart. Daddy, be good. Thanks for the time.
Hey, you bet, Schmitty. Take care.
Miss us?
Come here, brother. Give me a hug. Bring it in for the real thing.
We're on call for you. Catch the podcast at hailvarsity.com, the ESPN Lincoln app, or download them on iTunes.
Saddle up, partner.
Back to Hail Varsity Radio.
One final time, kind of a blur show, man. We just flew through it. Sirles just didn't answer. He didn't hang up. Like, dude, did you hang up? I want jerky. And he texted back and said, no, I just stayed silent. That's my jerky. That's my deer. Good stuff from Jeremiah Sirles, from Gary Barnett. Big thanks to Lars Anderson and Brandon Vogel. Lars in studio that first hour. Show's podcast, Hail Varsity Radio. Give us a rating. Love us, hate us. Give us kind of a middle thumb. I mean, what we want is feedback, good, bad, or ugly. Spotify, iTunes, Google Play. Give us a rating. Tell us what you think. Subscribe. And thanks so much for doing so. People have sent us on the road this year, the folks that have made all of our road shows possible, Ferris Financial Group and Arrow Capital. Ferris Financial Group, they're in Lincoln, and their goal to educate, coach, and help you work towards your investment goals. That's investment strategy. That's also budgeting and planning an overall game plan. And they're there for you in times of transition, whether you're starting a new job or going to go through a job change, and they help you with the future when it comes to retirement. Contact Marcus Schmidt today at 402-525-6824 or marcus.schmidt@lpl.com. Find out more about Ferris Financial Group, ferrisfinancialgroup.com. Arrow Brokerage, Arrow Capital, they are incredible. Full-service real estate brokerage. They specialize in that real estate investment, and they're there in all facets of the real estate process for you when it comes to buying or selling or staging, and also investing in properties, much more. Be sure to reach out to broker Jenny Limbach or realtor Marcus Schmidt. And ways to get in touch with Arrow Brokerage, brokerage at arrowlincoln.com. The website, arrowlincoln.com/brokerage. And, of course, Facebook at Arrow LNK. Instagram at Arrow_Lincoln. We are on the road Tuesday for Nebraska and Creighton. We are at the Single Barrel inside the Graduate. So come by. That tip-off's a little later for a Real Red tip-off. Come by, get a steak, get a whiskey, make your way towards Nebraska Creighton. We'll see how the Big Red rebounds tomorrow night. More time on Husker Hoops. We'll talk with Jacob Padilla. We'll get in with Bill Dolman And Clausburn back with a forecast. I need to get even with you. Steak and a beer tonight, Baltimore, Miami.
What's the line on this one?
8.5.
Okay.
And it isn't Snowflake and the Dolphins. I will take Miami, but I need more than 8.5.
I'll give you as much as 9.5.
Okay, I'll take 9.5.
I'll take Baltimore 9.5. Sure.
Okay, sure. No, all they need to do is cover, baby.
Miami doesn't even have Tua.
That's maybe an okay thing.
That is maybe an okay thing. I guess we'll find out tonight. Well, the Ravens don't really have a running back right now. They have
two though. I mean, they've got Le'Veon. They got the former Falcon guy.
Are we to the point where we can say Le'Veon Bell is washed now, though?
I think Le'Veon's.
When was the last time he had a respectable NFL season?
Oh,
it's been at least 4 years,
Pittsburgh,
right?
yeah. Le'Veon, I think, has had too much incense going.
It's a good way to put it. Well, I guess we'll see.
Man, I would that would mean I would owe you 2 steaks and 2 beers. Got to get even. Got to chase it a little bit. Thanks for your time. Thanks for checking in with Hail Varsity, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Talk to you tomorrow.